Good afternoon. My name is Larry Klayman. You know me as the founder of both Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, and I'm a former federal prosecutor. There's something happening today with regard to the intelligence agencies. They're meeting with President-elect Trump in New York to go over what they claim to be Russian hacking of the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign and attempts to influence the election. The information that is available thus far was not given to the public, and in fact, a confidential report apparently was leaked to NBC News by these intelligence agencies. As I've said over the last few days, the information provided that the Russians did the hacking and it was intended to influence the election is extremely suspect. It comes from basically politicians' political hacks at the CIA. People like CIA Director John Brennan, who is appointed by President Obama, who has his loyalties in that direction. It comes from James Clapper, who is a certified liar. He lied under oath to Congress saying that the American citizenry, hundreds of millions of us, were not being surveyed in terms of our telephone communications. Frankly, Clapper should have been indicted, convicted, and put in prison. If he'd been anybody else, it would have happened. But the establishment in Washington, D.C. are afraid of the intelligence agencies, as the American public should be, because they have the ability to gather information, in effect dirt, on virtually anybody in this country and smear them. It's a type of coercion, it's a potential blackmail. And we know from a client of Freedom Watch, Dennis Montgomery, who was a CIA NSA contractor, that John Brennan, James Clapper, and others in the intelligence community were harvesting the confidential information of 156 judges, including the Supreme Court Justice, Justice Ginsburg, prominent businessmen, most likely Donald Trump himself, and others over the last many years. They were doing this illegally in violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. And in fact, I brought a lawsuit initially in my own name against the National Security Agency and the CIA and other intelligence agencies, and had a court rule in Washington, D.C., a federal court, Judge Richard Leon, that this was a violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. He ordered that it stop. Ultimately, Congress changed the law and called it the USA Freedom Act in order to be able to allow the telephone companies to keep this information and turn it over only on request through a warrant that shows probable cause that a crime is being committed or there's communication with terrorists. I doubt that the agencies are following this. But let's go fast forward to today. President Trump is meeting with John Brennan, head of the CIA. He's meeting with James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence. He's meeting with James Comey, the FBI Director. I took our client, Dennis Montgomery, who revealed what was going on in terms of this harvesting, to James Comey. And I did that through his general counsel, James Baker. They assigned various agents to the case, William Giardina, another one by the name of Mr. Barnett. There's a U.S. attorney involved, Assistant U.S. Attorney Deborah Curtis, and I was able to get immunity thanks to also efforts by a federal judge who's very honest in Washington, who I didn't have any cases in front of, Royce Lamberth, who has done many good things over the last several years. And Montgomery came forward with 600 million plus pages of documentation, and he also spent several hours under oath being videoed by the FBI. This is about a year and a half ago. Nothing has happened since then in terms of this investigation. So I have asked President-elect Trump through his intermediaries to question James Comey. What is going on with regard to this investigation? I have also gone to the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Bob Goodlatte, and asked them to make an inquiry at the appropriate time, and to also ask James Comey, when he comes before the Judiciary Committee, what is being done, because there are 156 judges or so who've had their confidential information harvested. That's very dangerous because they could be blackmailed. For instance, was the bizarre reversal of Chief Justice Roberts on Obamacare the result of something that was generated by the CIA or NSA that was used to blackmail him? We don't know that. Bad things happen. They can happen. And this is a crime for the CIA to be doing domestic surveillance on American citizens, much more judges. So we want the answers to these questions. And the irony here is that Russian hacking is not good, but the United States does hacking of Russia. Everybody does it. The answer here is to have cybersecurity, to not let it happen in the future. And we don't know whether it happened with regard to Hillary Clinton's campaign or the DNC. We know that the Democrats are spinning that to delegitimize the election of President Trump. And in fact, just today, the second-ranking Democrat in the Senate, Steny Hoyer from Maryland, who's a real hack in his own right, did an interview on CNN and perhaps other places before Carol Costello of CNN, saying that this whole issue of Russian hacking has delegitimized the presidency of Donald Trump, and he would support the House of Representatives now challenging the electors' vote for Trump, which they're supposed to ratify today because the electors never had information from the CIA, NSA, and other intelligence agencies before they confirmed the voting that took place on November 8th, where Trump won through the Electoral College. So these kinds of things are influencing our body politic, and the American people should not be fooled. There's an old expression, when a lawyer moves his mouth, you know that he's lying. Well, you know what? I'm a lawyer, and I'm an anti-lawyer, because I know that. I'm in the legal profession, and we've been trying to clean it up for many, many years with regard to lawyers and judges, particularly when I started Judicial Watch and now at Freedom Watch. But when the government speaks, most of the time it's not telling the truth. It's lying to the American people. And that's the problem here. And we have a new president who's going to be inaugurated on January 20th, who understands about the swamp in Washington, D.C. He understands how the establishment scratches its own back. He understands the corruption in Washington, D.C., and he needs support. And we here at Freedom Watch intend to support him. We'll criticize him when he does the wrong thing, if he does the wrong thing, but we need to give him a chance to succeed. This is our last opportunity because, frankly, what President Barack Hussein Obama and people like Hillary Clinton, who were Secretary of State, did to this country in the last 8 years, they brought us to our knees. We have nearly been destroyed in terms of confidence in government, in terms of race relations, a recent event recently where we saw a hate crime by some African American teenagers against a retarded white boy. They have stirred up hate, they've stirred up division, they have mismanaged the government, they have mismanaged foreign affairs. The Middle East is in turmoil, it's ready to explode. Israel's been trashed by Obama and company and John Kerry, the current Secretary of State, just in the last few weeks. And we need to get answers here. We cannot have intelligence agencies that are, frankly, the yes men, who are, excuse the language, excuse the French, the butt boys of politicians, coming forward to try to delegitimize this Trump presidency, which is what has been happening here. And with regard to Director Comey, I trust, because he had a good reputation up to the last few years, I trust he'll return to the integrity which he showed early on when he stood up to George W. Bush and said, no, you can't do warrantless wiretaps of American citizens and get into their internet without probable cause that a crime or communications with terrorists have been committed. He kind of rolled in the last few years. He became very political. He tried to satisfy both sides. He wanted to protect his own career or whatever the reasons were. But we need at least one person in this intelligence community who will do the right thing. And now is the time to investigate thoroughly what Dennis Montgomery provided to the FBI under oath with claims of immunity, with a grant of immunity to both give documents and to testify. Because if we don't have honesty in our intelligence agencies, we're going to have more disasters. We had disasters in Iraq. It was an absolute disaster because the CIA lied to the president and the American people that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. There's been many other lies that have been told over the years, documented in court cases and otherwise. And frankly, now is the time for President Trump to burrow in, to meet with these people, and at least with regard to Brennan, and at least with regard to Clapper, they're on their way out too, but figuratively speaking, to say, just like he used to say it in The Apprentice, ironically on NBC, you're fired. Because we need the truth here. And the fact that a confidential so-called report was leaked by the CIA to NBC just in the last few days when it's being kept from everybody else is an outrage. They get to do things we don't do, but the time is now for them to be held accountable like every other American citizen. And you have my pledge as the head of Freedom Watch, former founder of Judicial Watch, former federal prosecutor, that we will do everything we can to fight these forces of evil. We will do everything that we can to try to make the government more honest. We will bring civil lawsuits. We will urge criminal prosecutions of people who violated the law, and these intelligence agencies and their officials have criminally violated the law, particularly John Brennan at the CIA and and James Clapper in harvesting the telephonic information and internet and social media information of all Americans without reason to do so. This is very serious because the intelligence agencies are actually more powerful than the President of the United States because they can blackmail him. And who's to say it hasn't happened even in the last few years? So I'm bringing this message to you today. I want you to be alert. I want you to be fully informed. I want you to be educated as to what we face with this whole issue of attempting to delegitimize the presidency of Donald J. Trump. The intelligence agencies are being used as stooges to do this. There may be a problem with Russia. There probably is. There's a problem with China, North Korea, Iran, all of them. But shame on us for not protecting our cybersecurity. It had nothing to do with the legitimacy of Donald Trump. And now we must support him because this is our last chance to make America great again. God bless to you, your families, and everyone else that's in your household and elsewhere this holiday season. As we enter a new year, I am optimistic that the American people must rise up and protect their own interests. God bless.